It being the appointed time and the appointed place, I declare the deliberative session for the Hooksett School Board to be open at 2 p.m. Welcome. My name is Kathy Bobe. I will be the moderator for the Hooksett School deliberative session this afternoon. At this time, please rise so that we may, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you to your Hooksett School Board officers and other town officers seated on or around the stage. Today we have Hooksett School Board members Greg Martakos, the chair, Lindsay LaLiberty, not able to join us today, Jillian Godbout, the clerk, James Sullivan, Wayne Gortel, Amy Tremblay, Jason Hyde. We have SAU administrators, Bill Rearick, the superintendent of schools, Marge Pollock, assistant superintendent, Amy Ransom, our business administrator. Building administrators, we have Mr. Ben Loy, for Fred Underhill School Principal, Mr. Brad Largy, Hooksett Memorial School Principal, Mr. Matthew Benson, David R. Colley Middle School Principal. We have our district directors, Ms. Christine Galusis, District Director of Student Services, Mr. Daniel Roma, Technology Director, Ms. Justine Thane, Media Director, Ms. Megan Largy, Director of Math, Accountability, and Assessment, our school district clerk, Leanne Moynihan, our school district attorney, Anthony Muir, and Gordon Graham will be joining us shortly. We also have our budget committee seated in front at the bottom of the stage. We have Mr. Brian Susi, our chair. Mr. Susi, would you like to introduce the rest of your members?
Yes, good morning. Seated to my left, you have Mr. Ernie Benjavanga. Then we have Mr. Mike Koak. We also have our town council representative, Randall LaPierre. Next down the line, we have Luis Amadeo. And just to Mr. Amadeo's left, we have Mr. Germano Martins.
Alrighty, thank you. So this is a public meeting, and by law, we must open it to all who wish to attend. However, only registered voters are allowed to participate. Participation includes speaking as well as voting. So here's how the process will work. Each article will be read from the warrant. A motion will then be accepted on the article. The sponsor of the warrant article will normally be recognized to move the article. The floor will then be open for a second to the motion. And after the motion is seconded, there will be a period of discussion. Anyone who wishes to speak on the article will come forward to the microphone, and please state your name and address. So let's move ahead with the warrants. So we're going to start with Article 2. Shall the Hooksett School District raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote for the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $37,456,481. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $36,875,094, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Hooksett School District or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13 X and XVI to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Estimated tax impact is $13.56. Recommended by school board, recommended by budget committee, 6-4. So I look for a motion.
Madam Moderator, I will move that warrant article number 2 be placed on the official ballot.
Okay. Do I get a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Susi, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, the school board has presented the budget to us this year. I believe it was in probably November, I believe. We deliberated on the school budget. From that time forward, taking a look at it, there was a lot of significant impacts, two specifically, that made the budget go up as high as it did this year. The first one would be the mandatory obligation that we have towards paying high school tuitions. There's a bubble that is going to be leaving our middle school system and going into high schools, and that bubble is going to cost nearly $1 million, as well as the special education impact forecasting for the needs of those children in our community that require special education. That's another roughly $1 million. So the default budget has gone up by that much, as well as the regular budget has gone up by at least that much too. There was really not a lot of change that could be made inside the budget this year. A lot of things were budgeted pretty tightly. Some things went up. Health insurance per se, that goes up every year. A couple of things went down, but not by much, but for the most part, leaving it at $37.5 million is kind of almost the best that we could do this year to make it happen.
All righty, thank you. Would the second like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
All righty. Is there anyone else that would like to speak regarding?
Madam Moderator. I would just like to say that the school board took a very active role in the budget, shaping the budget this year. I agree that we had some main drivers that really we have to contractually deal with. I took a very active role in the budget committee this year in making sure that we had our representation there. We also invited them to come to our budget workshops this year. So there was only some minor adjustments this year from the budget committee, which we unanimously approved. So I would say that it was a really good year of working the numbers, and we put a lot of things in the budget with only a 1.6 increase, so that we are feeling very confident about the budget we are putting forth.
All righty, thank you. Mr. Gortel?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Regarding the budget, Ms. Godbout's comments are spot on. It's a refreshing situation to have a school budget recommended by the Budget Committee that is also unanimously recommended by the school board. We've talked about full-day kindergarten in previous years, and I'd like to elaborate on that aspect of our proposed budget and provide some historical context into those budget details, if I could.
Sure thing.
20 years ago, Village School was a school and not Town Hall. Underhill School housed grades K through 3, not K through 2, and voters approved a $21 million bond to provide a major renovation to Memorial School and also build Colley School, which we're in right now. Portables meant the temporary housing at Underhill and not the laptops that all of our students have today. While Hooksett's population in that time has increased from 12,000 to 15,000 people, the school population has actually decreased by about 200, correlating with the decline in birth rates in New Hampshire. And this is important context to understand how full-day kindergarten was discussed in 2018 when voters were asked if the Hooksett School District should raise and appropriate $4 million for the purpose of financing the addition and renovation to Fred C. Hill Underhill School to accommodate full-day kindergarten. It's unfortunate that bond was described as a $4 million kindergarten project. It was large, it was multifaceted. We had talked about a new media center, Americans with Disabilities Act renovations, traffic and parking updates, and maintenance items. It was recommended by the school board, the budget committee, but unfortunately failed to pass the voters at the 60% margin required. So I was encouraged in 2020 to hear board member Cara Salvis report on kindergarten, and with a critical reevaluation of the existing space by administration, given the change in demographics, it was determined that with reorganization, we could actually fit 7 full-day classes in existing space without the portables, and that's huge news. And those portables were removed last summer. So we launched a pilot full-day K program, one class of 20 kindergarten full-day students and it was filled via lottery. Over 100 families signed up for the lottery to get a chance at full-day K. And discussion about the lottery, I think, is really important when we consider the proposed budget today, because the discussion was about how students coming into first grade had inconsistent backgrounds. So there would be folks that came in from our full-day lottery program. There would be folks that had private full-day K programs, other folks that came in from half-day programs or other situations. Some of those half-day programs had wraparound programs, and it's really quite a mix. So our half-day program yields about 2.5 hours of education time, and it's a short window to do productive work. Our K teachers are awesome. The parent feedback is fabulous. They do amazing work in that window, but it's just a different chunk of time compared to other programs that folks have in town. So I think this opportunity in front of us, where a full-day kindergarten, the same hours as first grade and second grade at Underhill, same bus service and all that, provides more opportunity to meet the needs of our students. And there's been a lot of discussion about the research on full-day K. If you separate the advocacy articles from the research articles, the theme is that full-day K done well in a way that reaches students where they're at is very successful. This is in contrast to rigid programs that are trying to drop a first grade program onto K. So keep in mind that we're talking about 5-year-olds coming into a full-day program, and the youngest 5-year-olds and the oldest 5-year-olds, that's a 20% difference in age because they're only 5 years old. So the kind of opportunity here where you have age-appropriate learning in a broader chunk of time to really meet individual needs, that's got a lot of long-term benefits, and I think the board and a lot of the community is very excited to offer that as part of our proposed budget. Finally, Hooksett's really behind the ball in this. I heard a stat recently that 94% of the state has a full-day K program. Hooksett, we're not part of that 94%. Families that are growing here, that's become an expectation. So I think we have an opportunity to implement this program and really catch Hooksett up and offer a great experience for our families. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
All righty, thank you. Mr. Sullivan?
Thank you. Just in the packet, it does say it adds 3.5 positions. Actually, it's not new positions to the complement that we have for the teaching staff in the district. As a result of, as it's mentioned up above, there is some teachers' retirement, and based on the numbers that school board members have been changing, instead of replacing those positions in other grades through attrition and retirements, we're, instead of rehiring them, we're reallocating those teacher spaces to the kindergarten program that both the members have. So it's not 3 additional members to the complement. It's just replacing others and reassigning them from various grades back to kindergarten.
Thank you. Mr. Susi?
Yes. In a follow-up to what Mr. Sullivan said, and it is accurate that we did have teachers retire last year, and those teachers are retired out of the system. Those positions are not being replaced. What Mr. Sullivan is saying is that this budget, not the default budget, but the existing budget, they kept 3.5 positions in it. They would have to rehire for them because the teachers did retire, and they would create the new kindergarten positions by this. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I actually articulated that 100% well, but I would have liked it. What I'm getting at is the kindergarten program, by making a full-day kindergarten and bringing on these 3.5 teachers, when I asked Ms. Ransom what kindergarten costs, what it's going to cost to run kindergarten as a full-day program, the number that I got was $390,711. I would have, as a budget committee member and as a resident of Hooksett, I would have much preferred to have this as an option on a warrant article alone to ask the voters themselves if they would have liked to implement full-day K separate from the budget itself. So now you're being asked, if you approve the budget, you will also be approving kindergarten. If you want to approve the budget and you disapprove of kindergarten, it's a tough decision to make for you. But it's combined as one, but the actual cost of full-day K is nearly $400,000.
Good. Mr. Gortel?
Thank you. A chance to follow up, Madam Moderator. We had some discussion at the school board about whether it should be a separate warrant, and there are a few reasons we didn't go down that path. First of all, the pilot program I mentioned before that was proposed 2 years ago and implemented, the school district had a default budget that year, so even though we had funding items for the full-day pilot, we weren't actually explicitly budgeted them. So those are running out of our fund balance. Essentially, money we budgeted that was not allocated to other activities. The challenge with K as a warrant article is that had that been opposed, we would actually be able to not offer that pilot program anymore. The nature of the RSAs regarding warrants, because we were offering a pilot program out of fund balance, we'd have to stop that program. So that would jeopardize that program we have in place right now. The other issue, I think, is that the proposed budget, it's a mix of things. There's technology, preventive maintenance, kindergarten. This is, I'm going to say, sort of the purview of the board here for what our education program looks like. So I think that it makes sense to be as part of that budget.
As a follow-up to that again, if the voters at the polls say no and choose the default budget, then kindergarten is out, and regardless if money is found, if they find $400,000 elsewhere, they will not be able to implement full-day K because the voters chose not to the default budget, which included full-day K as part of it. So if the voters say no at the polls, it's no is no, and nothing can be done for a year.
Alrighty. Would anyone else like to speak on behalf of Article 2?
I will say one more thing, and I will like to thank the school board and the administration for making the tax rate show the correct and full amount of what the impact is to you as the taxpayers. If you take a look at it, just like the town does, it is a whole number. So it focuses now on running the entire school system instead of just the increase of what it was over last year, which is how it was represented in the past. It looked like a very small number, but now you get to see what the total operational cost is, what the impact is per thousand on your tax bill. So thank you guys very much for making it uniform for the town.
All right. And other discussion?
I'd like to call on Amy.
Okay. Amy?
Just for a little clarification on what Mr. Sisi was saying about all-day K, you're voting for the operating budget, you're not voting for all-day K. So if the default budget happens, the board could still offer the single pilot program because you're not voting for all-day K, you're voting for the operating budget. So you're not saying no means no on all-day K.
Alrighty. I was going to say, I don't think there were people in the back who weren't able to hear you.
Sorry, is this, okay, now it's working. So it's just clarifying on the vote for the default budget. If you're voting for the budget in Article 2, you're not voting for all-day K. All-day K is included in the proposed operating budget. So if you vote for the default operating budget, the school board could still find money for the pilot program kindergarten that they are running right now.
Okay. Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on Article 2? Okay, please come up to the mic and state your name and address.
Jamie Dina, 31 Lindsay Road. I just have a quick question. You had mentioned that there are some teachers that are retiring this upcoming school year, and therefore you won't have to hire new teachers for kindergarten. And a gentleman had said previously from the PTA that there is space for these new kindergarten rooms. So why is there an increase for full-day kindergarten if we have the space and people are retiring, and typically people who retire make more money than the younger teachers?
The space, if I could try to answer your question. What's happening is, if we weren't discussing all-day K.
Mr. Rarick, I don't think, can they hear you?
If we weren't discussing all-day K, the budget would show it would be reduced by 3 teachers because they retired. We just didn't bring them back. So what we're doing is, those folks are still retiring, but we're using the money that we pay for them to pay for the teachers for all-day K. So we're not, all we're doing is reassigning people.
Right.
That's,
Correct. So then I guess my follow-up question to that is, why would it cost more to have full-day kindergarten? Because didn't you mention something about what was it, 391,700 something?
We took it out of the default.
Yep. So the default budget doesn't have those teachers in it. Those teachers have retired out of
Yes.
the teaching
Okay,
world.
Okay, so
So-
that's subtracting those teachers who are
That
put
is,
in place
that is
to
correct.
retire.
So the current budget, if the proposed budget gets adopted, then that money just sort of slides along.
Okay,
That makes sense? It's
It
just,
does.
if you choose, if the default budget gets elected, the 390,000 is the total cost, is what I was told, for what all-day K, what the teaching positions, those new teaching positions that they'd have to hire for, and the range that they would have to hire for.
Okay.
And the benefits, et cetera, that would be the 390,000.
okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to Article 2?
Good afternoon, Josiah Smith, 36 North Reading Street in Hooksett. Just a personal story, a little bit less on the budget side, and I think all that's super important and been explained very well, so thank you. I'm kind of in a unique position because my oldest was in half-day kindergarten here, and my youngest, or my middle child actually, not my youngest, is currently in full day. So I've been able to see it from both sides. And I know there's a lot of data out there, and studies are starting to show increases and decreases in other ways, depending on how you approach education for that age group. I will say, and I know there's a lot of variables, boy versus girl, and ages, and different times in life, right? But it was a marked difference in just the social development that I saw in my middle child that is in full day K over this past year. Remarkable difference compared to my first, right? So just from a personal note, I definitely support passing the budget in the article. But if you're worried about, is it too much for the 5-year-old? I do think that we do a really good job at focusing on play-based structure, right? And not necessarily implementing Common Core at the kindergarten level. So if that's a concern of yours, it's not happening right now, and I know that if we go to full day, it'll definitely have a lot of focus on it in the future. So, thank you.
Anyone else? All righty, come on up.
Mike Dullen, 6 Prescott Heights. I'll keep this pretty brief. I just wanted to say thank you to the school board members as well as the budget committee members. I know that this is a topic that has been one of those on-off buttons for a lot of people, and I also know that we have some very budget-conscious members on the school board. So I just want to say thank you for coming together and working these details out, agreeing unanimously on the school board level and still working it out on the budget committee level. This is a relatively important issue for the future of Hooksett. There is the statistic of 94% in the state as a whole, and as a city or township, whichever you want to look at it as, that is growing at a pace that almost outpaces many other towns in this state. Falling short on education for our children doesn't do us any justice or any benefit here. This is a great place to live. I moved here in 2019 because of the educational offerings at the higher grade levels, and continuing to expand at the lower grade levels, I think has tremendous value. So thank you to all of you. I know you guys hear a ton of less than pleasant things on the school board level. No matter what decision you make in budget committee, you guys can never do anything right because it's people's money that you're spending, right? So you guys should be commended, and genuinely thank you all for working this out. That's all.
All righty, thank you. Does anyone else want to speak to Article 2? All righty, seeing none, I declare Article 2 moved to the ballot as written. Article 3, shall the Hooksett School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $175,000 to be added to the Building Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund previously established in March 2020. This sum to come from June 30th, 2022 fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2022.
Yeah, you're reading the wrong article,
You're
ma'am.
reading the one wrong.
Should be 75,000.
Oh, whoops.
Sorry.
Oh, all righty, sorry. Okay, let me try this again. Article 3, shall the Hooksett School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $75,000 to be added to the Building Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund previously established in March 2020. Estimated tax rate impact is 4 cents, recommended by School Board, recommended by Budget Committee, 10-0.
I'd like to make a motion to place Article 3 as written on the ballot.
I'll second.
All righty. Mr. Sullivan, would you like to speak?
Thank you. This is a warrant article similar to what the town side has on numerous warrant articles for specific areas of concern. This is for the building and maintenance items. So if there's a issue that comes before the school district that requires attention to the buildings, there is some money available for this. In a way, we'll have some security that it won't, if things need to be fixed, or we won't need to be looking for a higher cost. We'll have some money available in the trust. There's currently 101,000 left in this, and these would be used for items in the past: roof replacement, paving, and associated building needs. This is a good way to help maintain the status on not increasing the tax rate as well. And just a note, someone mentioned that Hooksett actually was the second fastest growing community in the state after the census. Henniker was first, and the town was about a little over 10% growth, according to information provided by the town administrator. But I think this is a worthy article to maintain the buildings that we have: Colley, Memorial, and Underhill. So it's a prudent vote to make and to support this.
All righty. Mr. Gotcha?
Just to elaborate, everything Jim said was excellent.
Thank you.
The initial proposal, I think, by the school board was a little bit more in this fund, but given looking at the budget holistically and operating budget increases, we actually trimmed this down. So we're happy to put the $75,000 in this year. I think looking forward, once we've paid off the Colley School bond, which rolls off our books next year, we might look at this being a little bit more generously funded in the future, because big maintenance projects are expensive. But for now, this is, I think, a good balance between the needs of that fund and the operating budget.
Excellent. All righty. Any other discussion? Mr. Susi?
I would just like to add that this warrant article is a great way of making sure that we have the money to fix the buildings that we own, that we're required to keep up. And as you see, with the Budget Committee recommending this in full support with 10-0 saying yay, this is what we encourage on the town side of things, and this is perfect on the school side of things as well, to make sure that all of our buildings and structures are well maintained and there's no big spikes. When something big needs to happen in the future, it's not going to affect your tax rate all at once in 1 year, and then go back down and dip up and dip down. This helps keep everything nice and level for everyone all across the board. So this is a great idea and a great way of making sure that we're funded for the future.
All righty. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to Article 3? All righty. Seeing none, I declare Article 3 moved to the ballot as written. Article 4, shall the Hooksett School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund previously established in March of 2001. Estimated tax rate impact is 5 cents. Recommended by school board, recommended by the Budget Committee unanimously. Looking for.
I'll move that warrant article number 4 be placed on the ballot.
Thank you, Mrs. Tremblay. Do I get a second?
A second.
Thank you. Amy, would you like to speak to it?
Sure. So similar to the Maintenance Trust Fund, the fund would be established to address unanticipated special education costs without having to impact the overall budget from year to year. The school districts are required to provide special education services. That's both state and federal law. And it doesn't take very much to kind of blow those expenses out of the water. For this current school year, the Hooksett School District has instituted a budget freeze as a result of unanticipated special ed expenses. It only takes 1 or 2 high needs costs to, get a big impact. Contributing to the trust fund would allow the district to cover those obligations, things like out-of-district placements, specialized services, for students who move into the district and were previously not expected. So,
Alrighty, thank you. Mr. Matakos?
Thank you. One of the biggest drivers in our budget is the special ed funding, if you will, and this is one way to add more funding into a trust fund to have additional funds should we have some children come into the district that do require special needs that we did not budget for, and that's what this is being put aside for.
Alrighty, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to Article 4? Alrighty, seeing none, I declare Article 4 moved to the ballot as written. Article 5, shall the Hooksett School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be added to the Technology Expendable Trust Fund previously established in March 2008. Estimated tax rate impact is 2 cents. Recommended by School Board, recommended by Budget Committee unanimously.
A motion to move the article to the ballot.
Alrighty, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Alrighty. Wayne, would you like to speak?
I would, thank you, Madam Moderator. The interesting thing about technology in Hooksett schools, as a result of federal grants during the pandemic, they accelerated a program we had to get computing devices in the hands of every student. So every student in our district has a laptop or a Chromebook or some kind of personal computing device. Supporting that device is both hardware and software infrastructure. So we have to replace these devices every so many years as they age out. We have to license the software running on these devices. We have to provide networking to support these devices. So this trust fund, much like the others we're talking about, is meant to normalize expenses. So if we are faced with a large project in the technology side, it's not presenting a big spike in the tax impact to the taxpayers.
Alrighty, thank you. Jason, would you like to speak to the second?
Certainly, thank you. Just to echo what Wayne said, and what Mr. Susi had mentioned, the town has at least 10 of these type of articles, and they're consistently voted for by the taxpayers, and it's because it allows us to set aside money now for use in the future. As we all know, with inflation, money set aside now is more valuable than money in the future. So it's good to have the money now in an account. That way, in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, when we need to spend $300,000 on a project, we've got it already sitting in an account, and we don't have to increase our budget by $300,000 for 1 year and then drop it back down again, when our money is worth less than it is now. So it's these articles are a really great way to really wind up saving the taxpayers money and prepare for the future without spikes in your budget.
Alrighty, thank you, Jason. Would anyone else like to speak to Article 5? Alrighty, seeing none, I declare Article 5 moved to the ballot as written. Article 6, shall the Hooksett School District vote to establish a retirement capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1 for the funding of teacher retirement stipends and to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be placed in this fund. Further, to name the school board as agents to expend from said fund. Estimated tax rate impact is 5 cents. Recommended by the school board, not recommended by the budget committee, 3-7. Can I get a motion?
Madam, I move the Article 6 be added to the ballot as written.
Alrighty, thank you. Can I get a second?
I will second that.
Alrighty. Jason, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you. So this is another one of those articles about trying to set aside money now for future expenses. We had a situation this year where part of our budget is almost $250,000 in retirements funds to be paid out. That's a one-year thing that will go away next year, theoretically. And I say theoretically because we don't know how many people are going to retire in the future. And so we need to be prepared for that so we don't have a spike in our budget. We have an aging population. Our teachers are part of that population. At some point, more of them are going to retire. So it's important to have money set aside so that when they do retire, we don't, again, have to budget for another $250,000 one-year expense in a budget. The town does something similar to this. They have money set aside as well for when folks retire as part of their contract, they get a stipend, just like some of our teachers do. So it's important to have these monies set aside to prepare for the future, just like these other articles are for.
Alrighty, thank you. Jim, would you like to speak to your motion?
Just one, this similar article for the first time appeared on the municipal side last year, and it was approved by the voters for the same rationale, dealing with unexpected retirements and the costs associated with that. So it worked. It was approved last year for the voters for the town. It's certainly prudent to have similar article for the school district.
Alrighty, thank you. Mr. Susi?
Hi, I would just like to explain to you folks why the Budget Committee did not endorse or recommend this particular warrant article. It's not, I mean, you've already heard me saying a few times already that, you know, saving for the future makes an awful lot of sense, and this is how we sort of stop these spikes in your budget. This past year, or this coming year, what you're looking at is a $208,000 increase because 8 teachers are retiring. So those stipends are going to cost $208,000 to the taxpayers in this coming year. And that's a unfunded liability or an unfunded obligation. We don't know what's going to happen until the teachers submit their retirement paperwork. This year, it was an anomalous situation having 8 teachers retire. It hasn't happened before in the past. It's a good idea to save for these stipends and put some money away. Just the general consensus of the Budget Committee was that $100,000 was too much money all at once to put in. It's asking for an awful lot more. When you're having a $2 million increase in your school budget already, we're looking at it as, let's start the program, yes, but we were looking probably more at like $20,000 or $25,000 to put into this fund to start it out. We've always paid these retirement stipends through the budget process normally. This was just being established in order to keep, so when we have a spike, it doesn't hit your tax bill with so much impact. It can come out of this fund. But we felt as though $100,000 was a big ask for this warrant article to open it up with. It would have been nicer to fund it with a lower amount over the next few years than all at once. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to Article 6? Okay, seeing none, I declare Article 6 moved to the ballot as written. Article 7, shall the Hooksett School District adopt the revisions to RSA 198:4-B2 enacted in 2020, which allows the district to retain no more than 5% of the district's net assessment in any year, allows the expenditure of any amount retained after the school board first holds a public hearing, and further requires the school board to include a report on the retained fund balance in its annual report to the district, recommended by school board. Look for a motion.
A motion to have Article 7 move to the ballot, Madam Moderator?
Alrighty, can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Alrighty, Wayne, would you like to speak to your motion?
I would, thank you. This is a fund established by New Hampshire state law as sort of a contingency for unforeseen expenses. The school board had proposed this a number of years ago, was approved by voters, and was utilized, for example, 2 years ago when we were going to the pandemic. We weren't sure what sort of federal funds or other funds would be available. We knew we were going to have a lot of expenses, so the board had voted to put some money aside into this fund. The state law at the time allowed us to put up to 2%. It doesn't have to be 2%, it can be less than 2%, but that's the cap. State law was modified thereafter to increase the amount up to 5% and change the language to some extent, how the funds are retrieved from the contingency fund. So this article is really intended just to make our existing fund compliant with the new state law.
Okay, thank you. Jason, would you like to speak to your second?
Sure, just to back up what Wayne was saying, when we first adopted it, it was at 2%, and there was a pretty high hurdle that we had to get through as a school board to spend the money. And it's meant to be for emergencies, you know, a tornado comes and wipes out the gym, things like that. That's how that law was written. In 2020, the law was changed by the state in September, I believe, of 2020, to allow us to, A, keep a higher percentage if we saw fit to do that, and to make it easier for the school board to access the money. We no longer had to get DRA approval and go through other hurdles. Now it's just a public hearing and vote of the board. And this is what our attorneys told us we had to do in order to be compliant with that new law. We couldn't just decide to go with it. We had to get approval of the voters since they approved our initial adoption of this provision. So it's basically just to get your permission to continue doing what we were doing before.
All righty, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to Article 7? All righty, seeing none, I declare Article 7 moved to the ballot as written. Article 8, shall the Hooksett School District make the wearing of face masks coverings optional while on school grounds for students, staff, and visitors? This article was submitted by petition. I look for a motion.
Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that motion is automatically moved to the ballot as it was done by petition.
Oh, okay, all right, we can discuss.
We don't have to do anything on it.
Okay, all right, Article 8 moves to the ballot as written. Is that it?
Kathy, if someone would like to just speak to it, I think they could still speak to the
Okay.
the article itself.
I would love to.
Okay, sorry, would anyone like to speak to Article 8?
Jesus Christ. So
Now, this is all her doing. No part in this. She wrote this on her own. She knew I was coming here. She wanted to speak on behalf.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Mellon. Hooksett Road, Unit 109. I'm in 4th grade in Miss Seuss's class. And I would like to say something about masks because I would like them to be optional for children and teachers, especially in gym because we can't breathe in them and it's hard to talk. And the last thing I'm going to bring out is mask breaks because usually we get to take off our masks during then. But when it's like raining or snowing, we don't get to go outside because it's too cold or too wet. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Madam Moderator.
Okay, yes?
Yeah, I'd also like to speak in support of Article 8, as that young lady just said so well. The masks are not necessary, especially for children. In my 10 years experience in emergency medicine, I have found that humans do need to inhale oxygen and we do need to exhale CO2. It's super important. I'm also an athlete training in MMA and football and powerlifting for 15 years as well. Overall, the studies that I looked at throughout the last 2 years especially, I thought that surgical masks and N95s would help with viruses like flu and COVID. According to studies, and I have, I think, 14 studies right here, published studies by NIH and all that, they show that surgical masks and N95 masks both have a very similar efficacy for stopping influenza and coronaviruses, and that efficacy is essentially zero. So they don't even have a negligible effect according to all the studies, and I'll share them all with you if you'd like, and they're on my website and in my book. So the first thing is that surgical masks and N95s do essentially nothing to stop flu, meaning even less for COVID because it's smaller particles. The second important thing to keep in mind is that children are less vulnerable, susceptible to COVID than adults. According to even the highest estimates, COVID has taken the lives of less kids than such benign things as choking and fires and burns and falls and car accidents and probably even lightning strikes. So very, very few compared to other stuff. And especially, she reminded me that phys ed, if people are being forced to exercise with masks, that's a whole level that goes way beyond where I would say is in the territory of child abuse. So absolutely, kids exercising, it's unthinkable. There's nothing to say about that. Anyone being forced to exercise strenuous activity and retaining CO2 and not getting oxygen is really horrific and should not be happening, so they absolutely should be optional. So thank you.
All righty, thank you. Would anyone else?
One thing I'd like to at least point out, and Mr. Rarick, if we could have the attorney explain that, is if this passes legally what the school district is obligated to do, just so everybody's aware. I don't want people being upset if this passes.
The school board is the managing board of the district. The legislative body is the voters here. As the managing board of the district, and in accordance with state statutes, the school board has the responsibility of making the determination of what are and are not the parameters for mitigation plans to address the COVID situation, as well as other pandemics and other health issues that arise within the district. And so as long as the school board is operating within the law, it has the ultimate responsibility and authority to make a determination. So this article would speak to the school board, if it was adopted, about what the wishes are of the citizens, but ultimately it would be the responsibility of the school board to make a determination. And so as a result, by law, this is an advisory article to the school board. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Josiah Smith, 36 North Reading Street. Just in follow-up to, sorry, this is falling down right now. You broke it? Nice, too strong. All right, so just in response to the legal guidance that was just given, I will say this. We do not have to wait for a vote for the school board to do the right thing. That's number one, right? I think everything's very clear. We've made a very clear statement as parents signing a petition to put something on the ballot. It's the only thing that's been put on the ballot by parents this year. So please, you don't have to wait to do the right thing. We can vote as a school board to remove masking prior to this March 8th election. So that's number one. But then number two, I do think that it would be beneficial to point out that going against the wishes, if it's adopted on March 8th, of parents in the town probably is not the best option for elected officials to do. For many different reasons, but let's just keep in mind, legal is one thing and right may be another. And the right thing to do is to honor the wishes of parents for their children in this town. That would be my final request. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A quick question for the attorney as well. Could he explain to us how a school board enacting a law doesn't violate Dillon's rule?
Excuse me?
Could we explain to the voters how it doesn't violate Dillon's rule? Dillon's rule, the law in the state that no municipality can make a law unless the state preemptively allows for it?
It's been decided by multiple superior court cases that that does not apply to this because the state has not preempted the law, the rule, and it's in fact left wide open the authority of school boards to pass mitigation measures that apply to the requirement for masks. So it's not just me that said that, it's multiple superior court judges across the state that have made the determination that that's in fact the case.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Alexis Quidlin. I'm at 502 West River Road. I'm actually the parent that put that article on the petition in to be on the ballot. I did it from just a personal point of view. My oldest is someone that utilizes a special education, and he's in speech, and he's in it for not learning how to speak, but learning how to communicate and read different facial expressions, and that's really hard for him to do if he can't see from here down. He's quirky, he gets distracted easy, so it actually does affect him academically as well. My kindergartner, we weren't lucky enough to get into that full-day kindergarten. I'm so glad that you guys are addressing it and listen to the parents, because I know that full-day kindergarten was really wanted, so we're excited for that. But I just did it from, I think that parents should have the choice. You know your child best, right? You know if they're gonna do well, if they're not gonna do well, so that's why I put it on there. Thank you.
Alrighty. Would anyone else like to speak on Article 8?
Madam Moderator?
Yes.
I'd also like to speak in favor of Article 8. Prior to the implementation of masks, I had written the school board speaking to their efficacy, especially according to children who touch their face and whatnot. And study after study, including ones from NIH and several others that I included in the article, and I'd be happy to make it available to anybody, show that they're not effective, and there is no study that proves masks on children are effective. It's a security blanket, and it serves as that and that alone. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to Article 8? Alrighty, seeing none, Article 8 will move to the ballot as written. Are there any other questions or comments? Alrighty, I would like to make a motion to dissolve the first session of the annual meeting. Oh, I'm sorry.
It was me. I just
Sorry.
want, that's okay. I just really, it wasn't any business-related stuff. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody at the SAU and every one of the school board members this year for doing all the hard work and really drilling it down as hard and as tight as you guys could. It made life a little bit easier for us this year, and I just want to say thank you for making my job a little bit easier.
And this is my last year. I'm not running again, but I want to say that this is the first year in 7 years I've been on the board that we've all worked really close together. And if you notice, there's no bickering back and forth this year. It was nice. So I think that deserves a big round of applause to everybody, because 7 years I've been doing this and it has not happened. So Wayne and Jillian, thank you. And to the Budget Committee, thank you.
Alrighty, can I get a motion to dissolve the first session of the annual meeting?
So moved.
Alrighty, meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Way to go.